Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Final Fantasy podcast episode. This evening, we are all about Final Fantasy 16, but it is spoiler free. I am saying that because I am one of those people that does not own a PlayStation 5 and therefore hasn't seen the game, played the game. I'm trying to not see as much as possible. Everything beneath me this evening's playing tonight are trailers and some footage that Neon was very lucky to get in the early days before release. Thank you, Neon, as well for that. And this evening's guests are sort of the two sides. So we have Daimorti with us, who has not played Final Fantasy 16 because he does not own a PlayStation 5, and Neon Genesis, who has played Final Fantasy 16. So both of them will give their two views of all of the very interesting questions that I've pulled together tonight, which is not only about 16, but how sort of the series has evolved and how Square Enix is evolving as a company with these games. So the other thing that I want to point out first and foremost, I've got a very special ending to the podcast tonight. So I would very much ask you guys, if you're able to hold on until the very end. So keep tuned to the very end, guys. And the other thing is, if you have questions that you would like to ask Daimorti and Neon, there is, as always, the channel point command in the bottom, the Platy points. You already have access. So if you have any questions about Final Fantasy 16, please pop them in and we will get through them as and when we can. We do already have quite a lot listed tonight and we've got quite a few opinion pieces in. Thank you guys for sending in your opinion pieces. So what we're going to do first and foremost is let the guests introduce a little bit about themselves and what it is they love about Final Fantasy. So Daimorti.
Yes. Hi, my name is Modi or Nick, and yes, I am one of the fellow poors. I also don't have a console and can't play the game. What I love about Final Fantasy is that it's one of the oldest and most fun RPG series that always is out there. Um, it deals in very silly ways with incredibly difficult and dark topics. Almost every entry is just super dark and super adult, but kind of like tries to keep that like inner child alive in a lot of ways. And yeah, that's I think the main reason why I really love the Final Fantasy franchise.
Beautiful. Neon?
Hello everyone, my name's Neon Genesis. I'm a Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9 Final Fantasy speedrunner. And I adore the Final Fantasy series. It's just been my childhood video game series that I'll always go back to. Hard question to answer why I love it so much, but I guess every story's got its own unique appeal to it. It'll tell a story to many others, and some will gel with others more than others, if you like. And I just love that they have not given up on the series, and it just keeps on giving. Sure, there's my favorites, and there's some that are maybe not so up there, but I still think that the one thing they can deliver is a fantastic story.
Beautiful. I love these answers. So, guys, we're going to get into the nitty gritty. My first question is actually for both of you. So, Daimorti, you can answer this first out of the two. Final Fantasy 16, is it the death of turn-based Final Fantasy? If it isn't, which Final Fantasy ended turn-based in your eyes?
I mean, is it or is it not? Probably yes, by all accounts and interviews that the devs gave and the trajectory of gaming and Square. I would say turn-based died with 11 and then 12. They just wanted to focus on more action-y based combat. They kind of went back a little bit with 13, but let's not talk about 13. So, I mean, is it the death of turn-based? For mainline Final Fantasies, I would say yes.
Neil?
The death of turn-based. Similar answer to Daimorti there. I think turn-based ended essentially at like 11 onwards, really. I mean, 11's an MMO anyway, but still, I think at 12 was just drastically different. You're not having turns. It was this about gambits and things. I mean, I can dive into each of them individually, but I would say since probably those days they've been looking at moving forward with having a story still feel like Final Fantasy, but just having it be more evolved and more, I don't know. I mean, Yeah, that's what I think anyway. I think 11 really was like the starting point, because even 10-2, I don't even know if it was officially turn based, because I feel like if you were still inputting your commands, like the enemy's still getting a turn. And but yeah, I do think, I hope that I think we will see a turn based game again from Square
Okay.
for Final
Mm,
Fantasy. That's what I do think.
okay. And out of all of the mainline Final Fantasies, which deviated from being turn-based? What that did deviate from being turn-based? What was it that they did instead? So you mentioned 10-2 Neon. Do you remember what it was that they did instead?
Um, it was because so 10 and 10-2, that could be a whole podcast. But 10-2 is like, for me, the combat is not drastically different from 10, but 10 was officially turn based. Like a 7, 8, and 9 were ATB based, but it still like felt, turn based to a degree. But 10 is very like turn based. You can see what enemies are coming, moves are coming next. You can see what moves are coming when. And 10-2 had a similar system, but for example, I'm trying to think of in my head of the combat, but it just felt more active and almost more action, but still felt turn based. But you can see that was to me where they started to really kind of deviate from this like turn based system.
And Daimorti, you didn't want to mention Final Fantasy 13, but could you quickly mention Final Fantasy 13 and how that one actually sort of deviated from being
Oh
turn-based?
God, it's been so long. I actually like it was just a more active time battle, with more freedom in like switching and um I think you could switch your party members like in 10 as well. It's been a long time, and I'm trying not to dwell too much on 13 and the other ones. But no, it's just more action focused. It's more loosey goosey, just like the ATB system always was. I mean, like if we want to like be very nitty gritty with it, with the advent of ATB, Final Fantasy wasn't really turn based anymore because the turn order was determined by the ATB bar, and therefore you didn't have turns anymore. It's just like bar full attack, buff yourself with haste and stuff to be faster. Bar fuller, bar faster, fuller. Nope. Bar fuller, faster, and then attack more. So if you want to like get really down to it, like with the advent of ATB, it was like when they've always tried to not just be a turn-based like Octopath, like Persona style game, or like the older Final Fantasies, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Now, in regards to Final Fantasy 16, Daimorti, how much content have you allowed yourself to see, and how far into spoiler territory are you willing to venture, considering you're yet to play the game?
All of it. When Naoki Yoshida, long may he reign, said that work hadn't started yet on the PC port, I knew it was going to be at least a year, probably more until I could play it. So I just watched multiple Let's Plays of it and consumed just my favorite streamers playing the game and experiencing through that. So I've seen like 95% of all of the content in the game, I would say.
So it doesn't bug you that you know what's going to happen when you eventually. I'm assuming you are intending to eventually play the game.
Yeah, I'll play it when it's on PC. I did the same thing with Remake Part 1, because I also knew that it would just be too long, and I love the franchise, especially Remake. I love the idea of it too much. And 16, I love the setting and everything too much to deprive myself of it for too long. Especially with like an unknown date. If for example, Remake Part 2, rumor has it that the PC port might come out 3 months later. If that would be the case, then I would not go out and watch it. I would like wait for myself. But like anything longer than that, I just want to know. Like I want to be able to like have the discourse with my friends and like gush about it. And it doesn't really detract from me if I play it later. I've already forgotten some things, or I get to rediscover them in my own way. So it doesn't really bother me in that regard. Um, Specifically for this, like usually I like to go in blind and not know things, but in this particular instance where I just don't have a choice, either I wait an entire year or two, or I watch it, I'd rather watch it on release.
Okay. I think this is a bit of a spicy question I've got for both of you next. I'm going to start with Neon. Which was the last Final Fantasy that you truly enjoyed?
I mean, honestly, 16. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy 16. If I'm not going to include 16, I may be a minority here, but I did enjoy 15. It's far from perfect, far from the game it should have been and could have been, but I still enjoyed the game itself and the characters and the story. And I did all the nerdy stuff after I beat 15. I checked out some video, on lore and all this stuff. And I think there was a lot more lore in that game and effort into that game than people thought. But I think 16 would be my official answer. I did really enjoy 16.
Yeah. I mean, for me, if we go like by last played 14, I am very much playing 14 every day of my life almost. And if we don't want to count 14, then it'll be remake part 1. It's the latest I played and really enjoyed.
Very nice. So I do have a question for Daimorty that it's sort of let's see how this goes. So it's not just because you don't have a PlayStation 5 that you're not playing 16 on release. Did you stop at a particular game in the mainline series of the franchise, or have you actually played every mainline Final Fantasy so far?
I have not played every mainline Final Fantasy. I still have a big backlog. I started with 7 as a kid, and then I've never really gone back and played through everything. It's on my bucket list. It's on my it's there. One day I'll do it. But 13, like I played 13, and it really put me off the series, so much so that I then didn't go out and buy 15, and then was reinforced by the launch version being not great. Now, I agree with you, especially with the DLC, which used to be part of the game and then got cut out. 15 is a pretty compelling product. The story is a bit, predictable and cookie cutter, but the gameplay and the world, and especially the lore, is great. But yeah, like I played 13 and I really, 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 really hated it. Like I hated my time with it. Like so much so that I actually returned the disc to the store, because that was back then when that was possible, when you could like buy a game and then return it if you didn't like it. And I actually like played it for maybe 40 hours and then returned it because I just really couldn't get into it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the next thing I've got is an opinion piece for everybody. So this is from Adam at Phenomena Gaming, and he's got his opinion on Final Fantasy 16.
Final Fantasy as a history in the series has never really stuck to one exact formula throughout each of their games. There have been consistent differences. There's been differences in mechanics that they have tried. So it's a little weird to say that it's out of character from previous Final Fantasy titles because it's trying something new. It is trying the action RPG genre. I think it did so very successfully. But there have been other forays into action games. We've got Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. That's more of an action RPG. Final Fantasy 15 had sort of a blended action turn-based combat system. And so I think this is not something to be nervous about in terms of the development of the Final Fantasy series. I think overall, it is important to examine what are the roots of the series. Well, the crystals are a huge root of the series. The chocobos are a huge root of the series. And those pieces have remained pretty consistent throughout all of the Final Fantasy games. Yes, of course, mechanics, it's good that they change, they try stuff out, and they experiment. And I think a lot of improvement has come, especially with 16. I think 12 through 15 saw a bit of a downturn, but 16, I think, is a nice resurgence for the genre.
Oh, almost had a sneak peek of the next one then. So that was from Adam, talking quite in depth about the whole how Final Fantasy as a franchise has always been changing, and just seeing how they go, just testing the waters and stuff. This is a question for both of you, and whichever one of you feels like answering first. As it stands today, do you believe that Square Enix are innovative or constantly playing catch up?
It's a good question.
It is a good question. And
I
it's
think-
something, well, you can see we're both thinking about.
Yeah, I think yes and no. In terms of innovative gameplay in the mainline Final Fantasy, and I guess you can also take into account all of the spin-offs, they do try to be very innovative, or at least try to like shotgun spread and try different genres, different styles of games. We have Dirge of Cerberus, we have mobile titles like back in the day, Crisis Core, then like 10-2, the DLCs for 50. Like they try different strategies and tactics and gameplays and genres. But in a lot of ways they're very old school and slow in like the more business side and what projects they take on and how long the development cycles are. So I think like they just have like both. Like they on one end of the spectrum they try to like do a lot of different things, and on the other side they try to like keep it and play it safe. It took like what over a decade to get like an FF7 remake, and then they finally did it, and they were like, no, we're not remaking this game, we're remaking this game, okay? Like yeah, So I don't think you can say like they're like stuck or something. They always try new things. It just doesn't always land.
No, I kind of agree with Daimorty there. I think they've a bit of both. I think they're trying to like the whole reason why I think they're always trying to innovate as well is because if they kept on with like the ATB based or turn based, if they're stuck with that altogether, the series along with like the fans wouldn't have aged together. Like, you're then only pleasing the same audience. For me and Daimorty, who've been playing since 7. Yeah, we'd probably be happy, but maybe it would get stale at the end, with just the same, and you want something new, something exciting. And I think the biggest shock, I think, was 16's, action, because they were like, it's like true action, right? They hired like the Devil May Cry combat designer, they hired them to really like change up the series a bit. But I think, I don't know. I think the answer would be a bit of both. I think they're making the right decision to try and please, a bit of everyone, a bit of everywhere. And it does feel like someone actually said these exact words to me, where they're struggling to find their identity a bit, which I don't know. I still kind of disagree with that. I think they know their identity. They've got the core story, the core, design of what they want, but they're trying to keep it fresh and exciting, and also trying to hit the nail on the head with a good balance of, okay, this is kind of like what's being a most success. Maybe 16 will be that. I don't know.
And Neon, I do have a question for you next. From playing Final Fantasy 16, which game titles could you compare this most to, and how?
Whoa, it's got so many similarities in this game for everything, really. I mean, everyone says Game of Thrones, like, so there's a similarity there. I don't know if that was an inspiration to them there, or if they were just, so happened to fall down that rabbit hole and they were like, let's go with this. But there's a bit of that. I think they're like surroundings, being medieval-esque again, to go back to a medieval Final Fantasy, so maybe a little bit of 9 in there, maybe. I don't know. It's a tough question to answer. That's what I would think. I would say 9 has got some similarities in there. Obviously, the action being from like Devil May Cry, so you'll see a bit of Devil May Cry in there. Probably quite a lot of Devil May Cry in there. But do I feel like they truly delivered with the whole Devil May Cry, stuff they were trying to do? Not fully, but you can see that there was definitely some heavy inspiration. Bearing in mind, I've not played many Devil May Cry games anyway. But yeah, I think that's my answer. Yeah.
Lovely.
So hard.
The next one, I've got another opinion piece. This one is from Dupefort Gaming. And then we will have a question related to that for Daimorty afterwards. Let's get it up.
I don't own a PS5, so I couldn't get the game on release, but even if I had a PS5, I don't think I would be getting it. I've been disappointed in new Final Fantasy releases really ever since Final Fantasy 13. 15 was a disappointment to me, and so was, at the end of the day, Final Fantasy 7 Remake as well. So far, I haven't heard anything about Final Fantasy 16 that would convince me otherwise, so I'm going to wait and see how other people react to it, and I'll listen to people I know are kind of on the same wavelength as me on these things to see whether I want to buy it on release when it comes to PC, hopefully Steam, or if I'm going to be waiting for a steep discount.
So, Dupe actually recorded that for me before 16's release, and so you can tell that it's a little bit of this is how I feel before. He has since told me he still feels exactly the same. He hasn't changed his views, and he has seen people's reactions. He was going to re-record something, but I said, no, this is good. This is a bit of prehistory for us. So Daimorti, how do you feel about Square's contract with Sony in this modern age where PC gaming has become a much bigger market?
I am so glad it's dying. It's hard. I exclusives sell systems. That has been proven now with Starfield. It has been proven with God of War. It has been proven with Spider-Man. Exclusives sell the system, and where a very important part of Xboxes, Nintendo's, and Sony's business strategies until now. Now, Microsoft has kind of broken it up with their Game Pass deals, bringing all of the console exclusives to PC, some of them day one. Sony has now done the same with God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon. Like they're putting it all on Steam now as well. They've committed to putting games on Steam like as close to release as possible. And now with Square Enix actually entering a partnership with Xbox, bringing Final Fantasy XIV over there and promising to bring more mainline titles as well. At least the deal between Sony and Square seems to come to an end. They're probably like at the end of the contractual period, and they've both decided that they're not going to pursue another exclusivity deal. And it's great. It's great for people like me who don't own consoles, because I have my PC. It does what it does, and it does it well. And I don't see a value for me personally to own a console. So for me, awesome. No more exclusives, please.
That would be lovely. My next question is a bit of a mess of a question, to be honest, but we'll see what we can make of it. This is for everyone, but we'll aim it at Neon first. Why do you think Square like to create their own game engines for their game releases and created a new one for the 16th entry to the series? What problems could occur from them doing this, and does it look in any way dated to you?
Oh, that is a good question. I don't know if I think they should be making their own engine, really. I mean, I feel like, wasn't it 15? And wasn't there another game that they used the same
14.
engine? It didn't look too hot. I mean, 15 looks okay. I just feel like, I mean, 14, fair enough, they've done pretty well, but I don't know. I think they should stop personally and just stick with what they do best, I think. And that's giving us, I guess, hot take, good Final Fantasies. Maybe not all of them, but keep giving us those Final Fantasy games, and maybe invest in more of that and not their engines. Because I mean, look at Forspoken. Didn't land so well either. Oh yeah, that was Forspoken and 15. They used the same engine, right? I believe so. And that did, I think, from what I'm gathering, because I didn't play it, it did disappoint a lot of people as well. So I think it can make certain games look a bit dated, I think, sometimes. Don't get me Square Enix, please. I love you, please.
I mean, it's a very tough question. Yeah, I mean, there might be 1,000 reasons why they decide to do that. May pride, may it be business reasons. It could just be that they're selling it to different developers in Japan over there. We don't have full insight there. In Japan, it is a prideful community and country, so there might be a point of pride in developing their own engines. They failed, 3 times in a row with them until now. Now they seem to, with 16 at least on console, they seem to have nailed it in a way that it looks dated. Don't get me wrong, 16 looks extremely dated for modern like hardware. But it ran fine. It looked gorgeous. It had spectacle. So yeah, I mean, I can't really answer why they do it. But hey, switching to Unreal 5 is always an option, and the way Unreal 5 is being developed, I wish more game developers would take the plunge and develop there. But I don't think Square's gonna give up all their assets and investment in their own engines.
Just to kind of agree with Dimorted, I do think at 16, again, big hot take here. I do think it does look a bit dated. Again, does it reflect on it being a bad game? I don't think it reflects it being a bad game, but maybe I'm a big fanboy here. But I went to play and speedrun remake of FF7 remake after playing 16, and I played it casually first, remake. I wanted to play remake again, and it was great. I had fun with it, but I was like, "Wow, remake looks so much better than 16." Like even just like the lip syncing, and like I played the PS5 version, but me comparing that to a modern 16 game that just came out, I was quite stunned, and I kept on like saying to my stream, I was like, "My God, the remake looks so much better than 16." Like some scenes for 16, they had like really good lip syncing, like really good like details, and when they had like FMVs, it was stunning. Like I've never seen anything like it. But then when it comes to like comparing it to like gameplay wise of remake, like the lip syncing and just the general design and graphics, I was like, wow, yeah, 7 remake still holds up pretty well. To say that came out like, I mean, I guess I'm calling it the PS5 version, but it came out a couple of years ago now, or 4 or 5 years ago nearly. So I'd agree with you.
Yeah, it is quite a surprise from what I've seen. I do agree with you on that remake looks so
Stunning.
much better, and it surprised me. All right, my another question, another spicy one for you. Whichever one of you feels like answering this first. How do you feel about Square as a whole and their potential laziness in reusing game builds and assets from previous entries to speedline more titles?
Ooh. Do you want to take this one down, Malty?
I would have to like dig and get like examples for like reused. I mean, any development studio will reuse assets. That's common. Some do it in a way where you don't notice. Some do it in a way where you do. I don't think you should put much stock into it. Developing games is very expensive. I don't know, like comparing remake to like 16 or 15 to 16. Especially 15 to 16, like the style of the world design is very similar. Open green fields, open gray fields, castle, Magitech, kind of the same style. But I wouldn't call it lazy necessarily. It's just like what their artists have done and are continuing to do.
Yeah, I've a similar answer there. I think that they're using what I think that they think works. They're like, oh, this works. Okay, it's fine. We'll use this. But I don't think it's down to like laziness either, especially in order to get games out, quote unquote, quick, because I feel like Square don't do a lot of things quick. I mean, look at like Remake. Look, we're waiting for Rebirth for like, what is it, 4 years now? So, and like the development hell 15 went through, and 16 was in the works for quite a while, even before we got the first trailer anyway. But yeah, it's never really been an issue to me. If I've seen something that I'm like, oh, they've kind of used this like similar thing over here, and I feel like 16 and 15 do hold a lot of similarities. I don't know whether that was because that was the most recent, Final Fantasy, other than Remake, I guess, where they could like draw inspiration from, and maybe make the 15 game that didn't succeed to a 16 game where the combat's going to be more innovative, more creative, more action, and the world's going to be somewhat similar because we feel that worked when maybe it didn't so much as work. But I think it's not too. I don't think they're rushing to get games out and then using similar assets personally anyway. But
good. Our next opinion piece is from Goosewine, who is in chat right now. Let's see what he has to say for us.
The pacing in this game is all over the place. It is like you're playing two different games. One where you play the main quest, which is very linear, very grand, very spectacular, very, very awesome, and oh my god, chef's kiss. It's really good. And then there's this really vast and open world that you get to explore in almost an MMO kind of way, where you can do tons of fetch quests, very boring, very boring quests. So I would have preferred they would go the linear way with Final Fantasy 16. I think that would have made the game a lot better, because A lot of the MMO-ness, which I would like to call it, it's kind of boring. My God. Let's talk about the good stuff real quick. The boss battles are so good. They're so spectacular. I was pumping adrenaline each and every time I did a boss fight. And I must top my hat off to the music department. The music that plays when you're doing a boss fight is also, oh my God, it's so good. And now we have the main characters. I think the main cast in this game is phenomenal. Great work on that department. Go play Final Fantasy 16. Make up your own opinion, and I hope you get to love it.
There we go. So I did have to do a little bit of editing on Goose's just to cut him down just a little bit. That's why he was a bit at the end
cut,
there.
Goose.
Sorry, Goose.
She's not sorry.
I've had to edit a few just to try and keep the timings down, but thank you all for throwing them over to me. I do appreciate it. So my question after Goose is for Neon. Considering all of the angles, such as Yoshi P being producer for this and them using a version of 14's game engine to build on, do you see elements of 14 in this game?
Oh, absolutely. I do see a lot of elements in there, and to some degree, I didn't mind. You can tell that it was, they're using their own success of their own game and saying, let's put some of these elements in the game. The quests, I can talk about 16 for quite a while because I'm very hit and miss with some of the quests. Some of the quests late game, they shouldn't even be quests. They should be full on, like they should be the main game. Honestly, they are incredible, and they have. I'm not going to say too much, obviously, but they're packed with everything you can expect from every quest. But the questing in that game overall, whether it was inspired by 14 or not, it was just very inconsistent with the quality. The same goes for the story pace that Goose mentioned as well. I think the story is definitely inconsistent with, finding the track it wants to be on. I think at 1 minute it's up here and then down here, and then, you've just done some large spectacle, and then you might go and do a quest where you're collecting wood. It's such a it's so polarizing the difference in the pace in there. But yeah, I can definitely see some elements of 14 for sure in that game, and I think that's would be expected anyway, to be fair. But some of those elements were definitely maybe not shouldn't have been included, maybe, or dived into deeper and thinking, okay, what can we do that 14 does, but do it so it doesn't feel like an MMO single player game kind of thing. That's what I think they should have done, but I think they just went, let's do some fetch quests because, a game needs some fetch. And they did try to make it lore heavy, they tried to make it like a reason to do it, but some of it, in the grand scheme of things, where you're getting a lot of dialogue, and then it was like, so you want me to go and collect some flowers from a field? Like, just tell me that's what you want. I did feel that way personally, but anyway.
And Daimorti, do you expect them to bring Final Fantasy 16 elements into Final Fantasy 14?
No. I mean, yes, they will do a collab like they did with Final Fantasy 15. If the game directors of both games can agree on it. Yes, it's a joke. It's the same person. It's Yoshi. So yes, we'll most likely get a crossover event. So with 15, you actually got, what's his name, Noxus? Not the main character from 15, emo boy.
Noctis,
thank you.
Yeah,
right. Not Noctis. You got Noctis in 14, show up, and you got his outfit, and you had some quests, and sent him off back. I got his car though. I have his car. That's awesome. Can't get that car anymore. You poors. No. And so they're definitely going to bring that in, but they're not going to bring in more the gameplay because it just doesn't vibe. It doesn't work. Aside from that, the darkness in the story of 16 is definitely a product that came from 14 and what they've learned in 14. Though they might have taken it a bit too far in some regards. I want to also talk about the quests. I think the issue with the fetch quests is they put them in because every game has their fetch quest, like Neon said, and because they wanted to kind of get a bit more RPG into their RPG. Because honestly, it's not really a role-playing game. It's not it is teetering on the brink of just being an action game. very much. Like it's very much on that line, which is why so many people are divided about it, especially because it was a Final Fantasy game. Like it's definitely a Final Fantasy game, don't get me wrong, but like it's not really like what you would expect an RPG to be. So they put in some fetch quest to like pad out the world in a way that didn't really work with the main quest in a lot of ways. But I will say that, as Neon alluded to, some of those side quests are some of the most well-written pieces of like lore and story in recent memory, and some of them are some of the darkest things I've seen like since Endwalker. Like really, really dark and very adult. So I think it's just the problem that the highs in 16 are so high that when the game like stops you and it's like Gava flowers, you're like, what do you mean Gava flowers? Bahamut's flying up there. What do you mean?
Okay. I'll know that one day. This will all make sense one day. But yes, no, I understand the flower collecting and how annoying that can be. I feel like side quests have just gotten increasingly more annoying, and more of them in all Final Fantasies, from like just ongoing. From as soon as they started doing little side quests, they just progressively became more and more, and it's just been annoying.
You see, I didn't mind Quest, and I kind of agree with you. I think like it's almost like the side quest in a game now is becoming a bit dated as well. But I don't mind quests at all, but just have it be meaningful. Like I know that 16 were trying to bring in these like side quests to add a bit of lore to it, but if you looked at like, you know, with a magnifying glass, you could see that it's okay, I'm collecting some flowers now or something. But like if you're gonna just give us some quests, make it so they're worth doing. You know, don't just give us, you know, a lot of like, because in 16 you get like a lot of dialogue for these side quests where you could even think, oh my god, is this a main story quest? But it was just like they were all, it felt like a lot of words for go and collect 3 flowers. It felt like a lot of that,
Yeah.
you know, personally. But
yeah, the reward ratios was definitely off a lot. Like coming back to the point where like all of the RPG elements are kind of like shoehorned back in, like the crafting, the stats, and the gearing. Like all of it doesn't really matter. Like it doesn't. Like you can do all the side quests or you can't. It doesn't really impact your gameplay in the end. Which is a good thing for people that have limited time, and that's definitely something that they tried with this game. And they tried to make it easy and give you tools to make it even easier if you're not an action game player. Which is a bit to the detriment of the game itself because it kind of splits it a little bit. Like it's not like a full Devil May Cry, like, you know, juggle an enemy for 3 minutes, like super combo. But it's also not like this tactical turn-based, party-based game. So it does what it does well, but it could have done it in a way better way and excelled more had it focused on one thing instead of trying to like please everybody. But it was a risk that they took, and you know, I think they always knew that this game would divide the Final Fantasy core game. I mean, the Final Fantasy fan base has been divided since 12, since 13, you know, for the last 10, 15 years. So there's no way around it. You're going to piss off people.
Just to remind people in chat that there is a channel point command where you can ask one of these guys a Final Fantasy 16 question that you might have. I'm asking that we don't have any spoilers this evening, even though both of them seem to know all about Final Fantasy 16. I'm trying to not know about Final Fantasy 16. Yes, Croesus, thank you very much for showing that with everybody. That one, it's only 50 points, so you should all already have access to it. And we'll go through them once I've gone through all of my set questions. The next thing I have is an opinion piece from Psychic, who is also in chat right now. So I'm just going to play this one for you guys.
Almost every game had something new, or expanded upon very few elements of previous games in the series. For example, the leveling system in 2, job system introduced in 3. We also had materia, junctions, sphere grids, gambits, etc., with 16's big dive being into the real-time action gameplay, which we've already seen from previous games like 15, 12, Crisis Core, and then more recently in 7 Remake. there is still that classic Final Fantasy feel from games that aren't numbered that still came long after the originals, with a lot of them being on the mobile or handheld consoles. A few examples include the job/role system we see in Dimensions, Brave Exvius, Opera Omnia, some strategy tactical games like obviously Tactics, Revenant Wings, Chocobo Mystery Dungeon, or even just the ATB system like World of Final Fantasy, Record Keeper, and of course soon Ever Crisis. So, with the idea of Final Fantasy having been classic at all in recent years, yes and no. Yes, we do have games that fit the classic mold that people want. However, it's still a no because they aren't numbered, and I don't feel like we're ready to have that conversation yet.
There we go. I think it's a really good, really interesting topic, especially actually this morning I found out that they're bringing Ever Crisis to PC, which is a mobile game that only came out on mobile like a month ago. I think it might be like 3 weeks ago that it came out on mobile. So yeah, very, very good points brought up there, Psychic. Thank you. Neon, which game title would you compare the battle system of Final Fantasy 16 to, and how?
I think the obvious one, not being a Final Fantasy, would be Devil May Cry. You're going to see definitely very big similarities to that. Maybe it's kind of almost its own thing, because it's the real big difference where 15 was a bit more bland in the combat. It was maybe action, but I mean, some people say they just spam square in that or something, which is fine. It's not how you should play the game. But with 16, it became its own thing. The combat of Devil May Cry combined in to make it its own Final Fantasy game. Personally, I was quite skeptical on the combat, whether I'd even be good at it. I was all right at it, by the way. I was okay at it. I think that's probably the biggest similarity, because even, and again, I'm trying not to spoil here, but even in 16, they didn't even have like weaknesses to elements. So there was no like, oh, the enemy's weak to fire. Like, they just didn't have that in this game. So that was, to me, kind of almost a core aspect of Final Fantasy games that you would expect to be in a Final Fantasy game. I mean, like Remake had it. I don't even remember if 15 had that. I know they had elements in it though. But yeah, I think I can't pinpoint because it's so vastly different from 15. I would like to say it's got similarities to 15, but I don't even know if it has. I can't say it's got similarities to 13 or 12, because there's no like strategy involved per se. You're not like controlling gambits and your own strategy. It's a bit of a unique ball, I think, this one.
Gags has actually said no elements equals 14 influence.
I don't think so. I don't think it would be the 14 influence. I think they just wanted to dumb down. I think they wanted to not have people feel like they needed to spec out of certain icons in order to do fights. I think it was all about power fantasy. Going to like the Devil May Cry aspect of like you don't change your character because the game demands it to. You change your character because you want to be cool as fuck. So I think that's more the influence there.
And kept it a bit more simple, I think. I think they wanted it to be more about, the fast-paced combat rather than like, making it dumb it down or to make it a lot more simpler. I think I think they were trying to like they were batting home like how heavy this would be an action game. And to be fair, I mean, they weren't wrong, but I don't know if I personally hope they go back to like some similar elements, from previous Final Fantasy games. But again, it would be begging the question we asked earlier: are they being, too innovative? Are they doing it enough? Are they tailoring to the right audience? Are they finding that balance again? I feel like 16's heavy on balance in that game.
Interesting. I've got another question for you, Neon. I've actually got a few questions for you, Neon, because you've played the game.
Okay.
Do you think that they've created a battle mechanic that they'll want to use again, or do you expect them to change their mechanics entirely with the next entry?
I mean, going off like before I even played the game, looking at the trailers, you could see there was a lot of 14 in there. For those who've played 14, like the area of effect, you know, the I don't know what you call it, telegraph moves. Like you're like, oh, I need to step out of this, and so there was a lot of that in there anyway. And man, it's I don't know, man, it's a wild ride. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm trying to think here. My mind's drawing blanks.
I'm
That's
just
what I wanted to say originally anyway.
Has
But yeah, I would.
Dimorteeth got any ideas on the battle
You wanna-
mechanics?
I
Yeah.
think I would say they're gonna stick with like a more action-oriented game because that's just what sells more copies. That's just the truth of the matter. But we still talk about Final Fantasy, and so who knows? You know, you have a chibi mini time-bending fantasy game with like turn-based combat, and then you suddenly have like a click-based, tick-based MMO into a Star Wars like auto battler. And that's only 3 games so far. Like, it's hard to tell. Like, the next title could be something else. Could be a top-down RTS game for all we know. Probably won't be, but it's very hard to tell, especially because we don't even know when's gonna be the next Final Fantasy game, right? Is it gonna be like, are they gonna try to get one out in the next couple of years again? Are they gonna focus on the 2 DLCs for 16 first, then remake, rebirth, revengeance, resurgence, whatever they're gonna do, and we're gonna have to wait another 12 years for the next mainline entry? By then, like, the gaming landscape could have changed. We could all be like full dive VR at that point, you know? So it's very hard to say what the next combat system is gonna be.
Yeah, it's hard to decide when they'll go through the big transition again, where they go from like this whole era of, 11 or 12, onwards with like the whole action. So what's the next, era where they're going to go from that? Will it be VR or something, or will they go back to, ATB or a turn-based again? I really think we will see a turn-based again. I do think they're going to dive more into the action, scene more with Final Fantasy and try to find the balance, try and find what everyone loves. Personally, my favorite system out of all this was remakes, because you've got, you're still building ATB, you're still controlling your characters, it's still an action game, you can still control all your characters. 16, mainly, you are only controlling, Clive. So that's already alone quite drastic. I mean, I know 15 was on launch, but then they eventually had it, which probably means they were going to have it anyway, where you could control all of your bros, in 15. So you just don't know where that next change will come, and what that next, era we're going into will be and when.
No.
I mean, Pez has just said a salty question. Will they want to invest in 17 if 16 is not considered a success? I mean, they're always gonna make more.
Trick question. No game that is released by Square Enix is ever a success because they set the targets too high.
I think overall, 16 was, I would say it was largely successful. I think the amount of people that played the demo that would never play a Final Fantasy game were like, holy moly, like, this is amazing, like, what the heck? And to be fair, I can understand and I completely agree. And it was this whole, and one thing probably none of us have really kind of, majorly touched on is like this like more adult era they've gone into with like, 15 had some dark scenes, but 16 just goes and dives way deeper into that, way more adult, which personally I like. And maybe that, like Dimorteeth maybe mentioned that maybe they got a lot of influence from 14, but I love to see that. But I don't know, I feel like I would say 16 overall was successful, and I think that's the reason why we're probably getting these DLCs. I think with these DLCs were probably already planned, and they left seeds in the game for us to be talking about it. And then Square were looking, are they talking about it? Did they pay attention there? How many people were invested? And I think overall, you overall hear more positive than you do negative, or I do anyway. Well, maybe I'm only following people who like 16. Not to say that I don't ever hear people saying that they didn't enjoy 16, or that it's not for them, or that it was just all right or something. I'm excited to see what's next. I can't believe we're getting to 17, whatever that will be next. It's crazy.
Yeah, Pezza. Salty wasn't the word I meant to use, but it's the one that came to mind at the time.
No, he was salty. He was salty, yeah.
I actually, it's interesting you say that, Neon, about how the 16 sort of introduced a lot of new customers to Final Fantasy series, and I noticed in the recent Final Fantasy VII Rebirth content, they've been introducing 7 to people that have never played 7 before. Like they're specifically picking out creators from the streamer world and saying, "Hey, play this game that you've never even thought about." So they really, you can tell that Square are really trying to get as wide an audience as possible and thinking of it in a more broader sense than just making a game that they think people will like.
I think it's a good thing and a bad thing as well, because Square obviously want to reach to a new audience and they want to get them involved as well. But also it's going back to what we were saying earlier, where they're trying to please like all aspects. And I don't think personally you're not going to be able to please everyone. You're not. And you know, you end up like Yoshi P actually said himself about 16. He said, look, when they first were like developing 16, they said, can we make this turn-based? Because we know what the people want, which is why I still think we'll get a turn-based game. But he looked at it and they were dabbling over it and they just said, you know what, I just can't make turn-based and action work together. I just can't do it. So we're just gonna have to settle and say it's it's action. It's only action. There'll be no turn-based. There's no ATB. Whatever. And I think it takes like bless Yoshi P. He had to say that and to take the brunt of probably all the crap he was going to get for that. But I think overall, I think the game was successful, and I'd be interested to see what these DLCs bring personally, and how well they're received, and will there be a 16 too? Who knows?
I think we're getting to a question vaguely on that topic later.
Yeah. I mean, Plus just made a Baldur's Gate joke, but it's actually like true. We're living in a post Baldur's Gate world. The term RPG has a new meaning. So we'll see what the next 17, like Final Fantasy 17, is gonna be. Maybe they're gonna ditch RPG and go full action. Who knows?
Again, just to touch on, because there was something else I was meant to say, but I caught my own words there a little bit. But with Rebirth, they are trying to appeal to the newer customers as well, the newer audience to the game. And they've even like incorporated, no spoilers, don't worry. They're incorporating the like system so that if you haven't played Remake, you can kind of be caught up on it. Obviously, they encourage you to play Remake, obviously, but and I love that they're trying to tailor that to a new audience and to convince these new people, you can still play a Rebirth. You don't have to go back and play, Remake if you don't want to, or replay it or something if you don't want to. And like with 16s, maybe this is another hot take here. 16 had this whole like, do you want to be on story mode or action mode? And not even a spoiler, but like if you play the game, you can switch at any point anywhere. So the option to choose story or focused, you can change it 5 minutes later anywhere. So why give us the options anyway? It's a strange and unique little system they did there. Personally, for someone who was lucky to go to the April event for the hands-on event, I was skeptical, thinking, was it going to be any good at the game? Can I play this game? Will I need to play this on easy? I was not confident in my ability. And I thought, when I got to the event, I was like, I'm going to play it on action, see how I go. And it had a lot of a lot of elements that we're used to, like the stagger system and things like that, which I think they've been carrying over since, I think 13 was probably the first game that incorporated the stagger system. So I like that they're trying to help these new people come to the game anywhere, by giving us like, these accessories or whatever to help us through the play, if people are struggling or nervous or anxious to play the game. I like that they're doing that.
Yeah, it's needed. So okay, Neon, which Final Fantasy game could you relate elements of the storyline and setting to? Are there any elements of homage to previous entries?
I think 9's a similar one, because you can see the medieval aspect of it. I guess because in some areas of the game, it can look a lot like 15. So maybe there's some elements of 15 in there as well. Game of Thrones. I'm going to keep saying Game of Thrones because there's just so many similarities in that game. I mean, even one of the characters to me, I was like, oh my God, it's that guy from Game of Thrones. You know, there's a lot of similar. I was calling him that. I was like, that's how I remembered who that guy was, you know. So there's a lot of that to it. So I feel like they're the ones that stand out to me. I can't, like, I'm going through my head thinking, do I see, you know, elements of 7 in there? Not really. 8, not really. 10, no, not quite. The only thing I can think of that compares that you might feel like or similar into is like when you're playing 16, those large open zones that you get, they're very 15 feeling, but 16 just do it better. Personally, but that's why I feel like the similarities will come alive there.
Cool. Well, we've got another opinion piece. This one is from JJ, who is actually otherwise known as Snowman in chat. Don't know if he wanted to be outed, but he's been outed now. So let's just see what JJ has to say.
What's up, everybody? JJ here from Game Room Revival, answering the question, has Final Fantasy really been classic Final Fantasy in recent years? I think it kind of comes down to 2 main points for me. One is something that I heard somebody else say that I really think is something that Final Fantasy fans in general should take to heart, and that is that Final Fantasy II is the most important game in the series, which I thought was kind of weird at first because I'm not in love with that game at all. But I get where they're coming from, because if you think about it, that game set the expectation to expect the unexpected with Final Fantasy. That combat was completely different from Final Fantasy 1. Then you get 3 with the job system, and it kind of like keeps going from there. Each new iteration is going to be something completely different than the last one, which kind of brings me into my second point. I would love for them to bring back some sort of turn-based or ATB, but it's a little bit deeper than just, I prefer that gameplay. For me, it's all about the party members. Final Fantasy IX, Beatrix, for like the first, good section of the game, she's just a baddie. She's just on the other side. You're fighting against her, and that's about it. You don't really get too much about her. And then you get that whole segment where you actually get her in combat and you fight with Freya and Steiner and her, and just that whole sequence where you control her in combat. That's what it's all about for me. That's what changed my perspective of her and made her one of my favorite characters in the game. Something changes when you get to control an entire party of characters as opposed to just one, and you're getting to know them through the actions that you take in combat, if that makes sense. I love Final Fantasy 16 to a certain extent. I really think it felt like a Final Fantasy game. But as far as like connecting to all the characters, Clive was about it, to be honest with you. I didn't dislike the other characters, but I just didn't feel that like I'm going to be thinking about these characters years from now, like I do with those older games. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with nostalgia too. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said about being able to utilize those characters in battle and kind of create some sort of a cohesive family that is something I'm able to connect with by influencing their decisions in combat.
There we go. Very in-depth, very thought through. Loved it. Thank you. So, Neon, as JJ's just said, in this Final Fantasy, you only ever have control of one character. If there are other ones, let me know. How did that make you feel as a Final Fantasy fan? Does any of what JJ just said about Beatrix resonate with you?
Not necessarily resonate. I did think it was a strange move to say, oh, we're going to be controlling Clive, the only Clive at the all the game. But to be fair, it wasn't that alien anyway, because Noctis from 15 was pretty much just the only character I controlled on launch anyway. So I was kind of, I mourned the loss of having party members for a while, going back to when 15 was like becoming, either announced or coming out, or when I played the demo or whatever. I do agree where having party members and having them, be controllable can make them seem more likable. But I think it is in this case, 9's just such a well-written game. I think that's one of the most successful things about 9 is how well that game is written, and then how all the other mechanics in the game goes really well with it. It's such a beautiful game to relate you to in terms of the characters as well. So I think for me, I wouldn't go, oh, because this character might join my party in 16. Oh, I really like them, because that would be more of a I really like their style of combat. It wouldn't be like, oh, I really like that person now, personally. But I can understand for some people, it being an issue, or maybe not feeling like Final Fantasy where you've not got your other party members, and if that is your thing that helps you connect to a character, then I can understand that. I feel like it's a valid point.
And Daimorti, is this the first time that we've fought summons as summons? In which previous Final Fantasy games have we had similar experiences?
I feel like I need to buzz in for this. 10 comes to mind, obviously. 10 has summons fighting summons. You summon the summon, you wait for the cutscene, then you play as the summon. Though not like in 16. Like in 16, something that Yoshi P has been hammering in the press releases leading up to the game is that every one of those kaiju battles is like a unique experience, and they really, really managed to do that, in my opinion. Like, you don't just fight summons to summons. These are completely theatrical, like over the top kaiju battles with multiple stages and just such well designed fights of epic music. Final Fantasy has never had anything like that. And as one of the things that I love about the game, that I love about 16 so much, is just those battles are just so unique and fun and just bombastic. And Soken is just blasting on all, like, on 10 the entire time.
Just to add there,
Yes.
me thinking about it, I think, and I'm sorry, Daimorti, but I think you fight them in 13. Sorry. I think you fight them in 13, right?
Do you fight us?
It's kind of a
13's where you kind of turn into like a bike and things like that. Don't
That's
you?
the Shiva summon, yeah. But that's just a cutscene, right? You just summon Shiva, she goes on the bike.
You have to fight them to get to like the Gestalt mark or whatever on their like health, and then you've got to fill it up, and you've got a timer ticking down.
Yeah.
To be honest, I need to replay it. It's the one game.
Oh right, yes, no. Gag's got it right. You need to fight them to get them. Yeah, in 13 you fight the summon, but you don't fight summons with summons. Like you kind of do that, but like not like in 10 where you like summon it and then you use it as your party member for that period. I don't think.
Yeah, I was like, I haven't played 13 in years, but I just remember being stuck on a few of them, thinking like, what do I need to do here? Anyway, that's 13. Sorry, Daimorti.
So just to remind everybody in chat, as Goose has just reminded me, that you have got the opportunity to get your question in with the command points. Also, just to remind you all that you'll want to stick around to the end, because I've got a special little surprise for everybody. So what's my next question? Neon, does this game have a limit break? If so, what are they like? Are they similar to anything that's come before?
They do have a limit break system.
Yep.
I mean, again, to make it, Final Fantasy, you do have your limit break. It's a very unique system. Again, I don't think it's similar to anything we've had before. I think, again, it's from what I've been told, because again, I haven't played it. I think it's similar to Devil May Cry. They have like I'm guessing, is it their trigger? Devil Trigger, maybe?
Devil
I don't know.
Trigger Beast Mode,
yeah. So there is a limit break in it, but you don't get it at the beginning and like, oh, there's your limit break. You get this, I don't want to say fairly late in the game, a good section of the game, and then you start to get it, and then I can dive into how it even works, but like it's a good system. It's a good system. I think nothing similar comes to mind. I've played from 6 from pretty much up to 16 now. I can't think of a system that's really similar. No.
Okay.
It's very much a Devil May Cry mechanic, or like not even Devil May Cry specifically. It's an action game, like an action brawler mechanic that a lot of those games have.
Okay. And I've got another question for Neon before we've got our final opinion piece. Do you learn or purchase magic like in previous games, or earn magic with the power of the icons?
Yeah, you pretty much earn your magic with the power of icons. Yeah, it's It's like a skill tree kind of system, where it's honestly, it works. It does work really well with the game. I think, one of my friends in chat here, they said the same thing here, and when I thought about it, I agree. But the only downside is that you get all these amazing abilities. They're really good. You just don't get to use a lot of them all at once. Like if you are going for Devil May Cry, you want to use them all, once and have these combos and stuff, but they're just like almost like capped the amount you could use. Again, it tailored to balance, but also tailored to making it simplistic for people to get on with. Because I think if you'd come from like you know something like an older Final Fantasy 216, and then you've got all these abilities, it might seem a bit overwhelming. So again, they were like hardcore on balance. It had to be all balanced, and I can dive into more of that if you want. But yeah, it's pretty balanced. I mentioned that.
Okay, so our final opinion piece is from I Am Ferrico, who has recently also been in chat. Let me get him up.
I am Ferrico, and I just wanted to talk real quickly about why I decided not to buy Final Fantasy 16 on release. And the reason is actually Final Fantasy 15. 15 is a game that I did love and enjoy, but buying it on release, I felt a little burnt. I feel that I didn't have as good of an experience as if I waited a while, and it just made me a little apprehensive about buying 16 immediately on launch. Whether or not I made the right decision, time will tell. 16 does appear to have released in good shape, but it does have 2 DLCs coming out, which I guess playing it a bit later I might be able to incorporate into my playthrough.
Yes, so
That's fair.
as he mentions that now we know that they've got 2 DLCs coming out. Do you think they planned for this all along? And could this game create spin-offs? This is for Neon.
I kind of wanted to just like almost like validate them and just say I think everyone was really apprehensive with, going from to a newer Final Fantasy game. Again, this like open world, all these big large open world zones, to action game from 15. There was this, a lot of fans need reassuring from 15 to 16, I think. So I feel like everyone's valid to feel that way. And I think you can see maybe somewhat visually sometimes you can see, oh yeah, it looks like 15, but it's just this whole new thing. I do think, I don't know this person, but I'm sure they'll play the game, and I hope they'll have a lot of fun with it. But yeah. Can you repeat the question again? Sorry, I sidetracked.
The second part was, could it create spin-offs?
I mean, well, we have got the DLCs coming out. Could it create spin-offs? I think if they wanted to, they could. I think if they really wanted to, they absolutely could. I think there was a lot of had a really good system for the active time law, where they dived into quite a lot of the stuff, but some of the stuff they mentioned it but never really dived into. So I feel like that could be these seeds I mentioned earlier, where they could dive into more of that if they wanted to. I hope we don't see a 16-2. I feel like these, 10-2s, and I just feel like that those should be just done. Just done. I don't know if that's going back on what I just said, where they could. I think if you're just going to do it, just do a DLC, but just make it, worth the money. Don't give us like a $60 DLC for an 8-hour or 6-hour thing. I know it's a DLC, but I don't know.
Goose has just written in chat 10-3 incoming.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean,
they just had the music game, right? They're gearing up for another 10.
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yuna is back, baby. No, I mean, the DLCs have definitely been planned. Like,
yeah,
the game, like when you play the game, you notice where the DLCs have definitely been planned. It's not as egregious as in 15, where it's just like, oh, the game, like, there's just like 18 hours of game missing here. What just happened, Square? And then 2 years later, it's like, oh, thanks. I agree with that as well. It's not as egregious as that. Like it's definitely a very well put together standalone product, but they left themselves good room, in my opinion, to expand on it. Sequels to it, I don't want sequel. I'm with you, Neon. I don't really want sequels there. I think with how the story is, they could easily make like a prequel.
Ooh.
like a 16 minus 1. I don't know. But like, yeah,
And kind of
without
works.
delving too much into it, yeah, I wouldn't want them to make a 16-2.
Okay, I'm going to start going through chat's questions, guys. I'm going to start throwing these at you. Master of Stars has written one, did not aim at anyone in particular. Do you think Final Fantasy will eventually die as a franchise with the pushback that they have gotten since Final Fantasy 13?
As a
Personally,
franchise?
I don't think so.
No.
It's not going anywhere. I feel like it goes back to a little bit of what I said earlier, where you're going to be pleasing a load of people and then displeasing a load. And I think for me personally, I understand like where Duke was coming from earlier with maybe like the modern Final Fantasy just not ticking those boxes. But the way I see it, and I feel like this is as a person as well, is you've got to learn to evolve with the series a little bit. If it's just not your thing, that's fine. But then if you don't evolve with it, you will be left behind. And you've still got those games that you did enjoy. You know, that's the thing. Like you'll be left behind, so to speak, and you'll have these games to play. But I don't think. I mean, obviously, all good things come to an end eventually. But I just don't think that since a specific number is where like the series is slowly starting to die, because like even though we've spoken a lot about 13 today, but it has a huge fan base for it, and they loved Lightning, and they made 3 Final Fantasy 13 games in the end, and they were full games, right? Which is kind of what I was saying earlier, that if you're going to give us something, give us a full game, but make it, don't give us a DLC that's going to be worth like 6 to 7 hours and £60.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's I don't think Final Fantasy is going anywhere. I think, and this might just be a little bit of bias because I am a huge stan for Yoshi P and his team and what he's trying to build in Square. But I think we're entering like a new golden age for the Final Fantasy franchise. Like we're finally out of the era of like preserving the old games and like don't upset any fan. Like play it safe. Like take as little risk as possible. Which is why 15 took so long, which is why 16 took so long, right? And now we're entering into an era where they're milking 7, obviously a little bit too much maybe for some people. But like I really love what they've done with Remake and the idea behind it. And they could do that for more games. And just shows that they're now more willing to expand and experiment a little bit more with their Final Fantasy games, which they historically haven't been really. They've kind of always played it safe. Like the stories went like out there with like 10-2 and stuff, but they've like aside from that, they played it very safe. They're like, oh, people love 10, let's make it 10-2, and then like 13 is very divisive, but it sold very well. Let's just make it another one. Oh, people like that. Okay, make another one. And I think right now we're entering into like an era where Square is willing to take a few more risks. We just had a CEO switch, and like the vibe I'm getting from the new CEO is a little bit more adventurous and willing to take those risks and maybe greenlight more projects of creative people in Square that just weren't possible like 5 or 10 years ago.
I think to add to Daimoti there, I think I agree. I also think that it's really important that they always try to give us something new in these Final Fantasy games, because we mentioned this earlier, but since like FF2, they've been doing things different. Yes, 7, 8, and 9 had similar systems, the ATB system, and maybe that worked in somewhat of the similar way. But I think they're gonna by trying out new things and being more adventurous and being more daring. I think 16 was quite daring, so like no, it's action and we're shooting down equations now. It's not gonna 7 they maybe tried to please, and they did, but 16 are like, no, it's action. And I think that these by growing a pair, if you like, is important in this series, because then you can see what works, what doesn't work. And like I think 7 Rebirth at the moment is looking like they're adding so many cool things to the game, and they will not all hit. They won't like knock the ball out of the park for every single one of them, but they will move forward to the next Final Fantasy or maybe to part 3, and they'll go, okay, well, they really like these mini games. They they would like this, or they were like that, or the open world was felt open world even if it wasn't open world. And I think that all these elements are important in a Final Fantasy where you've got to try something new, so then they can learn what works. And I think there's no harm or wrong with that, my opinion.
Very nice responses, guys. I'm gonna very quickly go back to my set questions, and then I will do more from chat. It's just that I actually wanted to read this one out whilst we were on this sort of topic, this area of Square. This is for both of you. How do you feel about Square's tactic of releasing extra content with extra costs? Has it always been this way in your eyes? If not, at what point do you think they changed their ways?
Pretty much always been like that. Like, I mean, obviously the old like Square like we're talking about Final Fantasy. Most of those games were pre-internet era. So you couldn't just give more content. Like you had to release an expansion. And then with 15 is when they really misstepped it and they got really pounded for it, rightfully so, where you could prove that right before release they cut out big chunks out of the game to sell later. And I don't think they've done it since in their releases. I can't recall another.
Well, I just feel
Square
like so you
title.
couldn't play the, I call it the Yuffie DLC, unless if you'd bought the game on PS4, you didn't have the Yuffie DLC, so then you had to buy the game again. That was
Well, you
one
didn't have to
thing for
buy the
me.
game again. You got the upgrade, then you had to buy the DLC separately. But you got like the PS5 upgrade for free, I think, was the deal. There was some
Well-
kind of deal. I mean, that was Sony, I'm guessing, like trying to push the
Probably.
PS5 because it didn't sell well compared to Xbox in that year. But yeah, that also was something that they got flack for. That's
I
true.
think the reason why they brought the Yuffie DLC out as well was to test the PS5, like, you know, the PS5 power to see if what was going to work, and hopefully feedback again going into Rebirth. Because the one thing I have faith in, I know this is about 16, I keep going on about Rebirth here, but I feel like they really want to get Rebirth right. They really, they're like FF7 to me is Square Enix's baby. I do think that's why they're milking it so much, because they know it's like everyone's baby. I think, you know, the more I see of Rebirth, the more I think, oh my God, if they're doing 8 or a 9 remake, how good are they going to do it? Because so far, in my personal opinion, and I wonder if Dimorty feels the same, but I think Rebirth, they're really just hitting the ball out of the park. Like, you know, they've really expanded on everything they could have done. Everything that I thought they could do, they're doing that and more. I didn't think it would be, you know, what we're getting, and it looks like we're getting a lot more than what we're getting.
I agree. It looks a lot. It sounds like it's a lot larger than what I thought they would be able to do in the second part, which has me excited and a little bit scared because it could be shallow. And I know from the preview gaming sessions that a lot of what was shown was very linear levels, very 16 style. So we're not getting like the full open world experience. But no, I'm very excited for it. Very, very excited. And to come back to the integrate or the intermission DLC, I think like I don't think that was like cutting out something and then selling it later. I think they released remake, were very unsure if it was gonna perform well, and then when it performed well, we're like, okay, cool, we have an idea. And I think especially because the DLC and remake completely overhauled and innovated on the combat system and made it so much better. And now we're getting that combat system and those like team synergy attacks in Rebirth, and it's awesome. Like they tested out like the base combat system, and people were like, it's great, but also kind of static. And then like they brought out Yuffie and Sonnen and was just like, this is great, more like that. And now, you know, you see the trailer where Red like, you know, kicks Tifa into the air. And it's amazing. Like I can't wait for those combo attacks. It's my favorite thing in most games when you have these like over the top ridiculous combo attacks that you can just do over and over again.
And
so I think they innovated a lot with intermission.
Yeah, that's the whole point of like why it's important that they always try to create something new or to expand on it. And you know, this is what I was saying about like, you know, giving us these new different kinds of combats, and you know, whether 16 appealed to most people or not. You know, they're probably going to take bits from that game. Okay, what did work? You know, did the combat work? You know, did the story work? I mean, the voice acting was god tier in that game. And, you know, people can complain about, you know, Final Fantasy games or whatever, but the one thing they never get wrong in that game is the music. In every single Final Fantasy, they have fantastic music. It's just the one thing that a fan never needs to worry about is the music. But I think, you know, with the Yuffie DLC, they dived into like aerial combat, and it really did need looking at for remakes. It had its problems, and it looks like already by doing the DLC, they've now accommodated that and adding maybe some better aerial combat. Seems to be so in Rebirth. So it's just really, really important that they keep trying out new things. But unfortunately, you're going to displease a few and then please a lot more, maybe. So
Yeah.
Always the aim, I'm sure. This is for both of you. Do you think this release may go the same route as 7 has, where it could have an anime, a movie, multiplayer online, any kind of areas like that?
I hard to talk about because we are keeping it completely spoiler free, but
Yep.
no. No. Those avenues are not really there.
no, I agree. I think 15 again. They learned something new from 15. Like 15, I quite liked that they did a movie. I was like, oh, I get to watch a movie before the game comes out, and the movie was good. And they brought out an anime. Then they've got like books now. I'm not even joking. They've got like books to like I think there was like a book for Aranea now. And then they've got all these DLCs. And again, it's just patching up a game that went through development hell. I don't even know if the game even knows what it wanted to be by the end of it all. But I don't think they'll go that direction because 15's content overall was just spread so like vast against all kind of media. I just don't think they'll go that way. At the very most, I think they'll maybe look at maybe making a movie, but I just don't even know how a movie out of 16 would look if you look fighting kaijus in the sky. It'd have to be like a cinematic movie or something rather than like a realistic thing, which I think 16 dive more into realism a lot as well, even though it's Final Fantasy.
Okay, I got some questions for Daimorti. The first one is from Paul, which is clearly going to be a 14 question here. He says, have you beaten T yet? TEA?
Yes, the Epic of Alexander,
Yeah.
Ultimate Fight. Yes, I have months ago.
No, I have not, but I know exactly what it is. I've just never
Casual.
gone into that kind of content. It's great. It's a great game.
And my next question for Daimorti, how do you feel about the fact that you are waiting for the P series? I know we touched on it a little bit earlier. Do you expect it to have day one issues on PC?
I always expect it these days. I always expect it. I don't know. I know what kind of producer Yoshi P is, and I know that he doesn't settle for mediocre. So I have hopes that it works, but it's still Square Enix, so probably not.
Okay, now I have a question from Master of Stars, which also kind of links with my question that I have for Neon. So I'm going to read Master of Stars' question first and aim it at Neon. For me, a good story can carry a game, but Final Fantasy XVI was so repetitive, I struggled to finish it. Was this an issue you faced while playing it, or do you think Final Fantasy forgot how to make the game fun?
I didn't have an issue with the story. I thought, I could happily play that game and focus just on story. And maybe the last few side quests because they're really, 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 really good. I could honestly play that game and be satisfied. I didn't feel it was repetitive. I feel like maybe the side quests can make the game feel repetitive because you're just doing. I mean, there's a section of the game where you've just done a part of the story and it's great, and then you unlock some side quests. You think, oh, I'm going to spend the next hour or two doing some side quests. You'll do like 4 and another 5 unlocking. Like whoa, and then you're like, okay, I'm just doing. So that can make the game feel repetitive. Story, I thought personally was great. I didn't have an issue with the story, and it being fun. It definitely had some pacing issues where I feel like when it really did go on a bit of a lull, it really went on a lull for a bit. But it's still, while I was in that lull and maybe doing side quests and collecting flowers or something, I was just kind of almost like digesting the game and going, okay, but what's the next part of the story then? And it just got me wondering, and the wondering side of it just made the game just feel fun for me. I just didn't have any issue personally with it being fun.
Because my question separate to Master of Stars was what did you click with least in this game? Suggested story, mechanics, the lack of a party, and what would you change about Final Fantasy 16?
Was that to me?
Yes.
Okay. The thing I had an issue with the most, honestly, one of my pet peeves in that game was the pacing a little bit in areas, but more the side quest. I've spoken a lot about it. It was just, there was times, and I'll be honest, I'll be genuinely honest here. I streamed the whole thing. It was a good 60, 70 hour game. Big game. It was, some people even argued to say it was too big, which I can understand what they mean by that. Again, I had fun playing it, but the quests for me, sometimes when I was doing the quests and I had all this dialogue going on, I was getting bored. There was times when I was like, shall I just have a look at chat? Shall I like look at my phone a little bit? It was the side quests that really were my pet peeve. The areas of the zones were great. Like the music was fantastic. The monsters were great. I didn't find anything else. It was just, for me, it was the side quests. I thought that was my biggest pet peeve.
And Onesie asked, should I just play, that's me, H-Bomb, should I play Final Fantasy 16 already? Should I borrow a PlayStation 5 for a weekend or two and just get it done?
Nah, at this point, just wait. You'll have the PC version and the DLCs.
That's a good point.
I think, I
don't think you're gonna like the game.
Ah!
I don't think it is not your game. It is too focused on action. Like, you can make it easy. You can make use the auto dodge accessory, auto like combo accessory and all, and like go through it. But I don't think you're gonna enjoy the gameplay.
Yeah,
I think you would. I think you're gonna love the story and the characters. Like 16 has some of the most amazing characters in all of Final Fantasy history, I think. But you're not gonna like the gameplay. It's not gonna be your cup of tea.
Yeah, and for me and Daimorty, who know you as a person, I think that we know that, we know mostly what we think you'll enjoy. As Daimorty said, you'll enjoy the story and whatnot. But would I say go out your way and get a PS5 and borrow it and, get it played over a weekend? Well, you'd need longer than a weekend. But so in that case, I wouldn't be rushing for it. I do think, though, maybe give it a go anyway, because you don't know. You might just, maybe this is your gateway into enjoying the sort of more modern Final Fantasy games, or going back in and maybe it's opened up eyes to enjoying these Final Fantasy games moving forward, and maybe it's going to help you evolve. But I just wouldn't go out your way. Like, I wouldn't say, for someone who knows you, go and get a PS5 now because you're missing out. Like, Rebirth, maybe. Rebirth. But for 16 now, I don't know. I think we already know, and I think you already know if you're gonna enjoy the game.
Well, that's the thing, because from what you guys have been saying this evening, and now you're saying that you don't think I would enjoy it because of the gameplay. I'm at a bit of an impasse, because so I've recently been playing Crisis Core Reunion, and I've really enjoyed the hack slash mentality of that one. And then I do actually enjoy Remake for all of its mixed buttons spamming. So if it's neither of those styles, I'm trying to work out what Final Fantasy game it could.
I think Crisis Core is a okay comparison. It is way faster than that. But I mean, the good thing about 16 is that it gives you the option to respec your gameplay at any point, no cost. You just go to the menu, you hit the button, and you change your abilities. So you get to really there's just abilities that make things easier. Like, there just is abilities in the game that make things easier, that are very powerful. And cheesy, and you can just focus on those. If you say now that you started enjoying a Crisis Core and the more very action focused combat, then you might actually enjoy it. And it is definitely a lot easier to play than Remake was, because you don't have a party. It as Neon said, it's a big negative point if you're a Final Fantasy fan to lose your party. And I would definitely think that the Rebirth Remake way of having active combat with party is much better, and I prefer it. But there's something to be said about the simplicity of just having one character and your party members just do their thing, and you don't care about them at all. You just do your combos. So maybe you like it, yeah.
I think, and similar to what Daimorty was saying there, I think if maybe, when I just said that maybe playing 16 would be your gateway into these action games, but maybe Crisis Core is that for you now already? So now you're already on the verge of, well, I enjoyed Remake actually, and Crisis Core is great, and so maybe 16, maybe that's a reason for you to be excited for 16 now, because 16 it does like level up. It's like, you know, Crisis Core and Remake are fine. They are quite fast-ish paced, but 16 is like this whole new thing where it's really fast-paced. But there are things in the game that you can do to make that game easier and tailored for you. You know, these this like story mode you can do. Like there is a way to even I believe mash one button and play the game for story if you wanted to play for just story, and the game will do everything for you. So but it's very accessible, no matter like how intimidating it might be that you've maybe watched a stream or seen footage where they're doing these big combos. Like you can still do those combos even without being that skilled. It can be tailored to the person playing the game. I really hope you play it. I hope you enjoy it. I really do think the story will be something you'll be attached to. I think in particular the first few hours you will be wanting to see more, and I think that the game does that really well. Hope to see it soon, maybe on stream sometime in the future.
I'm just saving money for a PlayStation 5 first.
In a few years.
Bad timing, H-bomb.
I know. I've got one question from Goose. Any music from Final Fantasy 16 that stuck with you for a few weeks after finishing it? Neon.
It's hard to pick. Oh,
and
sorry.
Daimorti.
No.
Go, I didn't know you'd have an answer, Daimorti, so go for it.
Of course I have an... Of course. Dokkan is going 11 on this game, okay? There is a lot of really great songs and really great orchestrals, but the one that's still sticks for me, and I'll never forget, and I always want to listen to, is the it's not really a spoiler. The final music for the music for the final Titan battle is my god tier number one.
So good. Yeah, there is like if I have to think of a track, I have one in my mind already, and it was even before the game was fully released, and it was actually in a tweet, and it had like Ben Starr, who voice acts Clive, for those who don't know. He shouts like, "Come to me," and then this epic song plays. I don't know if you saw the tweet, anyone, but it's so good. And like I swear, like Yoshi P, Soken, like they knew what they were doing. They deliver. When it comes to music in that game, it's incredible. There's probably I can't name the tracks because I don't know the name of the tracks, but off the top of my head, I can think of about 4 or 5 that are just incredible. The one that Daimorti just pointed out, when I first heard it, I was just like, either I was screaming in my head or I was screaming out loud. It was like a blur because I've only played the game once, and I'm waiting to play through it again. And I was sat here streaming it, and I was just like, my jaw was dropped. I was like, what is going on? And, you know, again, no spoilers, but like they go from these like epic feats, and every time you have these epic feats and you get this very like personal music for each of these fights, you're there, honestly, you're sat there thinking, how can they up this?
Yeah.
And they do every single time. And you're thinking, no way, they can't up that. And they do it, and you're just like, but how? And like there'll be these different arrangements of tracks where you'll hear hints of that. Oh, the music is incredible in that game. Like I would say that if that doesn't win an award on its own, I don't know what, you know, part of that game will.
It's what Soken does so well in 14. He did it here as well. Every single fight, especially the boss fights, just has like a very unique musical theme and musical genre. Like the soundtrack of 16, like I would say like the 7, 8, 9 orchestral soundtracks here, and like a little bit funky stuff here and there, but more or less like you can nail down the genre. In 16, it's like you fight Garuda, that's genre 1. You fight Titan, genre 2. You fight something else, another genre. Like you never are prepared for it. Like when those notes start, when that cutscene ends and you go into the gameplay for Titan, it's just like, and then, you know, the face progresses and the music changes again. He's like, what is happening? And you're just like, yes, more.
And you actually do say that out loud. You say, what is happening?
Yeah,
but
you
like,
just, what?
Yeah, and then you scream what? Because it's literally one of those games. Like, Again, I'll touch on like some bits here, but it is very much a Final Fantasy game outside of like maybe, let's say, I think the biggest like thing for a lot of people was maybe like the pacing of story or the combat. But as what the story gives you, it gives you pretty much everything that you've had in a previous Final Fantasy. And I don't want to say what those elements are because it will take away a little bit of what you can expect. But I think it's they do it so well. They do it really, really well. And the voice acting is probably some of the best voice acting that I've ever seen.
yeah.
And I mean that nearly in any video game. It's incredible. And Ben Starr's performance, and you'll know it 100% when you see the scene, you'll know what scene I'm talking about, but you'll hear it, like the emotions. You'll hear it. And I was just at CooperCon where there was an interview with him, and he was just like saying how he brought on his own personal emotions, and he projected that into his voice acting, and you can hear it. And I'm a voice actor fan, but if you play the game, I would love to see you react to certain scenes. Let's just say that.
Absolutely.
My friend was just crying the other day at one scene, and then you got someone jaw dropping another day. It's so great to see.
It's also funny because you mentioned the voice acting in the remake being better than this game. And it's so funny because they like developed an entirely new system for lip syncing in 16, like a completely innovative software that allows them to lip sync for different languages. And they haven't perfected it yet, but it's gonna make development and like localization so much easier.
Yeah, in 16 there was like, and I think I talked about it earlier, I'll say it again though, there was some scenes where the lip syncing was like the best I've ever seen, but it was not consistent. And then when you got to your general gameplay, like 7 Remake, they were not perfect, you know, like sometimes I feel like Aerith's mouth was like flapping all over the place, but they were like at least flapping to like almost like the right syllables of the words. But in 16 it was, and I'm saying that honestly, in 16 for me, I thought in some scenes it was bad. Like it was like PS4, even PS3 bad. It was pretty bad, like the lip syncing. Graphically, the game didn't change. It looked really good. But as I say, certain scenes where there were really like deep scenes, some of the best I've ever seen. And I was like, if they were only consistent in that department, which maybe that's a financial thing, I don't know, then that game could have been pleasing, like visually a lot more.
Yeah, I think it's just a point of like first party software. Like they developed a new like rigging and animation system for 16 that they're now like selling out and stuff and like developing further, where it allows you to not have to worry about lip syncing anymore. Like it does it automatically once you like plug in the audio data. And yeah, they missed the mark a little bit, but I think like in the next few games that they release, it's gonna get much better.
Exactly. I think they're gonna learn from it. I think a lot. Yeah, for sure.
Daimorti, my last question doesn't really work because you've clearly seen the entire game and you know everything. My last question was, it's the end. We've discussed a lot. Any changes in how you feel about this game? Are you desperate to play? Do you still feel the same? Or less? Are you less interested in playing the game?
Man, it sounds like a drag. No, I'm still interested to play. It's very funny that I am now living in a world where I might play Rebirth before this. Like, if Rebirth actually does come out immediately after the exclusivity deal ends, which, I mean, who knows? Who knows if that happens or not? But it would be funny if like the PC version of Rebirth comes out before 16.
How is that going to work? Like,
no.
Usually it's like 6 to 8 months after they announce a DLC. So it does make me wonder, like, oh, if they're going to bring us a 16 DLC, is that going to come out like January, like March? Like, we've just had like Rebirth, like given a date. It's almost like when we had the release date for 16, then we had, you know, not many months later, we're having like a release date for Rebirth. It's what a time we live in. And we just had Crisis Core Reunion, like, you know, 9 months ago. You know, it's crazy.
Yep. Lots of Final Fantasy to go around.
Something you said as well, Daimorti, which I think is important to not to add an answer for you, but you said earlier on that even though you've seen the game, a lot of it, basically all of it, that you feel different because that when by the time you play it, you'll experience it different yourself. Even though you've seen the game, you know, with your own headset on, in maybe a dark room or something, you're going to experience that story your own way. You're going to, rather than just seeing these people making their own combos, you're going to be able to do it yourself. So even though you've seen the game, I can imagine you're still excited to get your hands on it and play it yourself whenever that will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because it's such an action-heavy game. like you can then tailor to your own playstyle and play it the way you want. And especially like with Rebirth, I played it then when it came to Steam, and loved every single second of it. Every single second remake. Even though I watched it, I went like tinfoil hat on every theory, like the deepest, darkest depths of the Final Fantasy franchise. I've been there. I was down in the YouTube comments, in the Reddit comments, like I consumed everything I could about remake because I love the idea of remaking it so much and how they like implemented the Advent Children stuff. We have a whole podcast you guys can watch on this channel about that. So no, like I just couldn't wait. Like I knew that like I couldn't wait like a year or two for it to come out. I just wanted to experience it. Like at the time, like people I really enjoy watching, Jesse Cox, Go Carnage played it, and I just had to like go on that journey with them. And it didn't take away from it, because for me, Final Fantasy is also just like such a franchise that I always can just like jump in and play. Like I'll play 7, from time to time. Like I might not like play it all the way through, but I'll boot it up and play it a little bit here and there. Or like 10, I'll boot it up and play it a little bit here and there. Even though I played it already, it's just like a comfy space to go back to. And I had the same with Remake. I just loved playing it myself and like hearing all the voice lines and looking at them and choosing your dress and everything. So I think the same will happen with 16. So I might skip some of the side quests.
Morty, if I can ask you a question, if that's okay, H-Bomb.
Of course.
What rating out of 10 would you give 16 from what you've seen? I know you've only seen it and not played it, but what rating would you give that out of 10? And I'll give you mine afterwards.
Okay. So I would give it a 7, with keeping in mind that I'm not IGN. A 10 out of 10 has to be perfection. Like Baldur's Gate, 10 out of 10. Ocarina of Time, 10 out of 10. So like a 7 is still very high for me. It's not like mid or anything. But yeah, like it does a lot of things very, very well. But it has flaws. It is not a great game. And it's very good that it came out before Baldur's Gate, because otherwise I would probably have to drop it even lower.
I think I would give it an 8, and that's for someone who's played it. And because I played it back in April a little bit. I mean, back in April when I went at the hands-on event, they didn't stop me. So I thought I would be playing what you guys played as the demo, for those who did play the demo. But I played further than that, and they just weren't stopping me. And some of the scenes, like when they were happening, I was like looking around the room, and I remember vividly looking at one Square Enix staff when something darker happened in the game than I expected, and he just looked at me and went. And for people can't hear me anyway, but he gave me a look of like, yep, you know what's coming. But like, I think maybe the DLC will add maybe an extra 0.5, maybe it'll add it, maybe make it a 9. I think it was an 8. I think a solid 8 out of 10. I can't say it wasn't a fun game. I can't say that the combat was trash. I can't say that the characters weren't likable. There's not really a great deal for me to complain about. Sure, the side quests, I've mentioned it over and over and over, but it's because they're like not mandatory. It was fine. I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, I will play the DLCs for sure. I'm invested in the world and the story. I do want to know more, and I think it had a lot of, the game overall has a lot of features that I really hope they bring out. The active time law. For those who don't know what it is, it's like a system where you can press a button and it gives you any information about anything, even during cutscenes. So if you're not sure and you're like, oh, who's that character? Oh, press a button. Oh, there it is. And it's like, a few sentences or something, and it tells you a bit about it. And you can like go back and revisit this at any point by, without pressing start, by seeing an extra NPC and, dive into a bit more there. Slight pet peeve there is that they just brought the Ultimania with all this extra story stuff when that should have been in the active time law anyway. But obviously they need a reason to sell that, the Ultimania. But I think a solid 8 out of 10 for sure is what I would give it. I just can't see myself lowering it anymore. And I can't say, oh, it's a a 9 out of 10 or something, because
Hmm.
as you said, it's got its moments and flaws, and by far not a perfect game. And similar to you, Morty, it has to be like like the good like remake doesn't even score 10 for me. That
No.
has issues as well. So, but maybe Rebirth.
Yeah, remake is a solid 9 for me, I think. It's teetering on like going to an 8, but I think it's a 9, but that is nostalgia definitely. And for 16,
agree.
it's just the mechanics of the severe underdeveloped RPG mechanics that are shoehorned in just drop it for me, because the entirety of the gearing and crafting is useless. It has no function. It has no function. It is number go up because number go up. It doesn't have any variant on your gameplay. You don't have to interact with the system. You can ignore the entire system until the end of the game. It doesn't matter. I know why it's in there, and it makes sense in some contexts, but they either should have gone, okay, we're making it at least like impactful and you have choices, or leave it at like, here's your gear. Oh, you're in chapter 3, no, here's your new gear set. You're in chapter 4, here's your new gear set. Instead of this like half-baked gearing nonsense they have in the game. So that just drops it for me.
Hard agree. I do a hard agree with you there. And that's another element to what a Final Fantasy game is all about, is the gearing system and the leveling up and feeling like you're getting stronger. And 16 missed the part on that. I know we're trying to not talk spoilers, but there are some times where I mean this is quite early game, so it's not really mega spoiler, but you'll get like an accessory that gives you plus 1 HP, and you're like, but really 1 HP.
Yeah.
And that's what Morty is kind of touching on, is that you can go that entire game and basically not equip that, because you're not going to notice a difference, or defense 1 or something, or HP 6. And by this point you might be like 10 hours into the game and you're getting plus 6 HP. So either it was, maybe it was very lazy on that mark, or maybe they just sort of shoehorned in equipment because they're like, oh, it has to be found, equipment. But it definitely needed more time to be worked on to make it if you're going to give us a crafting system or a equipment system, give us an equipment system. Don't give us this like half-baked a gearing system. And I think that alone is one of its weak points, which is, again, while it's maybe not an 8.5 or something, it's a solid 8. And just it's not budging from an 8 for me at all, because it just, there was so many elements that are in the game, but they're just not, they just missed the mark by a fair bit.
Well, we've reached the end of all of our questions. Do you think there are any areas we haven't touched on for Final Fantasy 16? Do either of you have any other points that you would like to bring up?
I feel like we've spoken we've spoken about the characters, well, without spoiling as well. We've spoken about the music. We've spoken a bit about the limit break.
One thing we haven't mentioned is the dog, but I don't know if we can mention the dog much. Can we mention the dog?
Boy.
He's a good boy.
There we go.
He's a good boy.
He's best boy.
He's a very good boy.
Yeah.
No,
it's hard to talk about anything. Like I
yeah.
would love to talk about a relationship in the game that I find is one of the most well-written relationships in media, and like something that most, if not 90% of all media gets wrong in a lot of ways, like an interpersonal relationship between two people. In this game, it's just like, yeah, no, that feels real, that feels earned, that feels correct. That would happen this way. And there's a lot of those things in this game. You can tell that the writers have really taken great strides and pains to make sure that the characters in this very fantastical world with these, magic abilities in this Final Fantasy feel grounded and real. And I think for the most part, they did that. And I really, though the characters in 16 will stay with me. I really, really loved the cast of 16, villains and allies and like party members.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think I've not mentioned much with Toggle, but I think when we spoke about having party members being in your party and controlling them, and then enjoying them, 16 did a really good job of you liking characters even if they weren't in your party, or even if they were but you couldn't control them. Like Toggle obviously joins you on the journey, but they make you feel something for that, that pet or that companion or that party member. So they did deliver when it comes to that kind of thing as well, I think.
James just asked in chat, have they talked about the forced buffs when losing a boss fight yet?
I was going to mention this actually, and I think I forgot to mention it. So I don't know if forced buff is what I would say, but, and again, we're trying to not to be spoilery here, but
Yeah.
one of my small minor pet peeves is that if you're fighting a challenging boss, mini boss, whatever, or even a boss, they will, like, if you die, which is fine, you don't start from the beginning. They'll, like, it's very forgiving. They'll do like, oh, phase 2, halfway, full health, you've got all your potions, go again. And you got all your potions again. So
Yeah.
they don't, like, take you back to, like, okay, so this is when you had all your potions, this is when you're at, before you even fought the boss. And so sometimes you were then starting the fight again, but midway through. It was one of my pet peeves because it was too forgiving, and that's coming from someone, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, for someone who was like, oh, can I play this game? Am I going to be good at it? As I was saying, they've tailored it so that the new players are welcome to the game, and they're not gonna find it hard. And I think they tried to tailor it to people who are maybe young, even though it's, like, obviously not a young audience game. So I don't know what they were doing there.
In that
Yeah,
case,
it's
I've got another question actually to just, sorry, Daimorti, but to move it onto PC port, I believe that Final Fantasy, when they moved Remake onto PC, they added more options. Do you think 16 will add options so that you could maybe change that and not have that and have a better, more hard experience?
I mean,
I don't-
it kind of is in there in, like, the extra difficulty unlock later. I think potions don't reset in the hardest New Game Plus thing. Not sure. They do on hard. I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, it's definitely, like, just a very casual, friendly game. I think they'd rather just scared that people would get, like, stonewalled by something, and then I found that it like, as, like, a hardcore gamer, it is kind of weird to, like, lose a fight and then you come back in a checkpoint. You're like, oh, I have more potions than I started with. Awesome. Well, that's easy.
you have all your potions.
Yeah, you
and,
have just
like,
everything back. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's a
I
bit.
think
It was. I mean, I don't think. There's always these discussions with, like, games of Elden Ring, Dark Souls. Oh, we need an easy mode for this and that and this and that, and they just went with that route and tried it out. And I don't think it. If it really takes away from the game for you, don't use the potions. Don't use the potions or reload the save. Like, yes, you can, like, argue about it and be can it be a bit it can be a pet peeve for you, but I think giving people the ability to play through the game even if they're disabled or, like, really bad at the game, and they have to use every help accessory, they have to reload every time and have to use every single potion. I mean, let them play the game as well.
Yeah, they made it accessible, and that's what I was saying earlier on by the whole balance thing. Like, they did balance it really well. It was only a pet peeve for me personally because I'm like, okay, just start from the beginning. I'll start this again. I want to get the fight down, but that's just me. Multi hardcore gamer, that's just me wanting to be challenged and feel like I earned my win. Even if I wouldn't class myself as a hardcore gamer or very good at the game, or especially when I was anticipating being good at the game. But I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it was just, I wish it was an option. And to answer your question,
Yeah, that's fair.
when they bring it to PC, I don't think they'll give you an option for that personally, but they could give you some extra options. And also, just to kind of complement something they did do on 16's launch, one thing that people hated was the motion blur, and they did fix that.
Yeah.
But man, they fixed it, and it was just great, and I'm glad they did it. But they were like gutted that they had to do a day one patch, but they did, and touche to them, and it did help a lot of people. But it was so problematic for some people. They were like, I'm not playing a game until it's patched. But they did it really soon. Like, they did it within a few days. And it was like a really short update. Because these days now you can almost expect a day one patch for most games. Which is in 16's case here, I think that they were fine. Like, everything else was fine. There was no major issues. Maybe there was maybe the odd bug here and there. But in terms of the game being buggy, it was fine. It was just
If
maybe
you were on
that
a pro,
motion blur. Yeah, for sure.
If you were on the weaker hardware, you, like, as Gag saying, the SPS was not that great.
Yeah,
sadly.
yeah, for sure. And it did. Me and Gangster spoke about this as well. In some towns or areas, the FPS would drop, or like it would you could tell as well. Like frames would kind of like drop in some areas. So it has its issues here and there. But again, is it incredibly noticeable to the average person, or to the to the dad who finishes work and has got a couple of hours after work? Probably not. Probably not. Yeah.
And it's just an epidemic, like that, and motion blur is just like an epidemic for consoles. And
for sure.
like many of the games that release on consoles are like the consoles are just underpowered at this point. Like we're getting a new Xbox refresh now that just is bigger and round, and then like it's gonna take 5 more years for the next Xbox console. Like imagine that, like 5 more years. Like 2028 is when we get the new hardware. Like until then, you can't, like, no game is gonna run at 30 FPS anymore in like without performance mode and DLSS, or FSR on consoles. Like they're already underperforming so much for how ambitious the titles are getting.
It's just now it's just at this point waiting for the PS5 Pro to be announced.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I've been waiting on.
Pretty much. So by the time you get a PS5, you're like, I finally got one, and PS5 Pro's out.
Yeah, don't buy a console right now, guys. Do not buy a console right now. Xbox had the big leak last week or 2 weeks ago, with all of their like release schedule. So they are releasing a refreshed Xbox, and if they're releasing a refreshed Xbox, then PlayStation's going to do the same with their PlayStation Pro version soon. Without this drive, probably though. So if you have physical games, well. Sorry.
Oh, I do want a physical drive, yeah, because you've got better storage then.
Yeah, the new Xbox doesn't have an optical drive anymore. This is 2 terabytes, and that's it.
Wow. As Blues has said, all you need is a Steam Deck in it.
That's the opinion of my wife as well. Yes, my wife wanted to buy one and prime it to me on vacation because I was whining so much about not playing.
Oh, that's actually a really good idea, Nim. Okay, so we've reached the end, and remember, guys, I've got a little treat for everybody on our closing screen. So it is time for us to say goodbye to our lovely guests for this evening. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions. Thank you, chat, for asking the questions and being here and talking with us and providing all of your opinions along the way. Daimorty, you haven't streamed recently. Are you streaming anytime soon? Where can people find you?
People can find me everywhere at Daimorty on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, although YouTube I'm not active. I'll stream whenever I can. I'm full-time working. Life has been stressful. I got married recently, so that took a lot of time away. Now I'm flying over to meet that lovely woman over in Britain next month as well. So schedule's kind of all over the place, but I hope around the holidays when things calm down and people leave me alone at work, I get to stream because I still have to finish Persona 5. We're getting a new Final Fantasy 14 patch. Yeah, there's a lot of games to play. Still have to play Starfield, even though I've played Baldur's Gate, so Starfield kind of feels like a downgrade now. But hey, we'll do it somehow. For Todd.
And there you go, guys. In chat, you can find everybody's deets through there. Thank you. And Neon, what about yourself? What's your streaming schedule at the minute?
I stream 4 days a week. I'm full-time streaming. Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Currently speedrunning Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just got the 3rd in the place in the leaderboard in the world, which is pretty good.
Very good.
Probably going to be diving into some FF7 OG speedruns in the coming weeks or months. Might try out some Final Fantasy 9 speedruns. I don't just do speedruns though. I do variety gaming as well, here and there. Obviously, I played 16 on stream. No major plans to speedrun that game or anything at the moment anyway. So you'll see me streaming 4 days a week. I'm on Twitch, Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube. I'm pretty much everywhere. So you'll see me around.
Pez is asking if you're live tomorrow.
Yes, I'm live tomorrow.
Had to think about that.
I have to think about it.
Okay, well, it's time. We're finishing. Let's all say goodbye, and I'm going to show you guys a wonderful outro. So goodbye, everybody. Say goodbye, guys. Bye.
Bye.